Good day, Tom Ginn, G-Force. G is for gratitude. I believe gratitude is one of the strongest words we can incorporate in our life and in our thinking and apply it. There's many things that gratitude does, but the first thing it really does, it eliminates negativity. It automatically moves it out of the way and gives you a better perspective, a better look at whatever you're looking at. And through gratitude, whether it's something that's as simple as the cup of coffee in the morning or the biggest challenge of your day, be grateful, because those things, through awareness, give you an opportunity to grow. So gratitude. So today I'm super, super excited to introduce actually a legend in the area of sales and business. Ben Gay the Third. Ben Gay the Third. He's an author, a public speaker. He has been in sales. This is the thing that really caught my attention when I was reading his bio. He's been in commission sales since age 14. I think that's phenomenal. He definitely started his business and career path at a very early age. But I'm going to not get into a lot of details. I'm going to be asking some questions to let you see the power and the influence he's had on many people within the entrepreneurial space, the network marketing, sales and training and development. So I'm going to bring on right now Ben Gay. Good afternoon, Ben. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tom. I appreciate it.
Well, Ben, what I'd like you to do is just, it's your story. And I would just share from age 14, what was that about? What you got into, where are you from, first of all? Originally, I know you're in California now, but share a little bit about your journey from a young person to where you are today, and I do have some questions I'll be asking as we go through here.
Well, I was born, as we say in the South, I was born a Yankee, but raised a Southerner by the grace of God. So I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts, lived there till I was about 6, still have family back there. Moved to California briefly for about a year. My father came out to open up Apple Valley ranchos where Roy Rogers and Pearl Bailey and all their people had their big ranches. Dad sold them to them. And then my mother didn't like the high desert country, so we headed to Florida to buy a real estate company, stopped in Atlanta, Georgia to spend the night with my dad's uncle, my great uncle. And as we went to leave in the morning, either my mother or I had the mumps. There was 11 days. The day we went to leave again, the other one had the mumps. There was 22 days, and in the 22 days, my uncle talked my father into buying his food brokerage business. So we stopped to spend the night in 1948, and remnants of my family are still there as a result of me having mumps 70 years ago. And so I grew up in the South, love all the good things about the South, the hospitality, the food. I don't like the humidity and or the heat, and which drove me into my commission job, my first one. I did fundraisers and sold Krispy Kreme donuts and did all that stuff that you're sort of forced into because your school is doing it. But my father left for work one day, came back for lunch, and I was still sitting in the same place where he'd left me. I was 14. And he said, "You got to get up and move around." I had wanted one of those self-winding watches. Do you remember that used to have
Oh, absolutely. You move your wrist and you can hear the little thing moving around and it's
Yeah, and it would wind
yeah.
itself. I wanted a self-winding watch, something bad. And my father said, I'd love to get you one, but it would always be running down. And, which I guess implied you had to move. So at 14, he says, "You go next time I come in this house, I want you out doing something." I said, "Well, what am I going to do? I'm 14." He said, "You could mow lawns." I said, "I don't have a lawnmower." He said, "It's that thing down in the basement with a motor on top of the two wheels. We have a lawnmower, and you're welcome to use it." So I went out, found somebody who let me mow their lawn, and came back. And when Dad came home, I was sitting there again, but at least I had grass clippings on my shoes. And he said, "Have you done anything?" I said, "Yeah, I mowed a lawn." He says, "Great, but you're not going to mow a lawn. You're going to mow lawns all day long." I said, "Dad, I can't stand the heat. I can't stand the humidity." I didn't say it, but I don't like manual labor, never have. And he said, "Well, I'll teach you something." So he taught me a little sales script to go up and knock on people's door and tell them that we wanted to mow their yard, that they could pay us whatever they thought it was worth only when we were done, after they inspected it. And I said, "That doesn't get me out of the problem." He said, "Oh yeah, it does, because you're going to hire your friends to do the work, and they're not as adverse to work as you are. Most of them aren't. And then you split the money with them." I said, "Why would they mow a lawn for half price?" He said, "Aha, you weren't listening. uh, you're going to get 2 to 3 times, sometimes it was more than that, more than you would have ever asked for the job, because of the way you're going to do it. And then when you split that with them, they'll have the same amount of money they would have had or more. You'll have money you don't deserve, and they're afraid to go knock on the door. You're not. You don't want to work. They don't mind that." So in the growing season in Atlanta from 14 to, I'm guessing, 18-ish, I had 20, 25 kids working for me as soon as the grass sprouted in May, April sometimes, all the way through the beginning of September. And I was making as much money as some of the adults in our neighborhood, and we lived 2 blocks out the front gate of East Lake Country Club, the club in Atlanta to be in and join at the time. Bobby Jones' home course. So I wasn't in a slum doing that well. I was in their yards. And the most I ever got under that approach, there was a yard I would have charged $10 for. They paid us $100. And when that kid got 50 for doing a $10 job, 5 of which he would have gotten, he was hooked, and he told all the others. So I didn't have to recruit anybody from that time. There were always people hanging around outside our house when I'd come out in the morning to see if I needed them. And all of my dad owned his own business. All of my aunts and uncles owned their own business. I'm guessing 90% of the people in the neighborhood owned their own business. And all of that, as you know, Tom, is based on selling. You don't have a business if somebody isn't selling. Elmer Wheeler said nothing happens till somebody sells something. So I grew up my comfort zone. I didn't know that term because Jim Newman, my old friend, hadn't created it yet. But my comfort zone was, you don't work for a salary, you work on commission, you own your own business, and let the chips fall where they may. And I was very comfortable with that, and I've been doing that. Occasionally I worked for somebody else. I was with MACY'S in Atlanta for a while, and but by and large, but even there, I was Bengay. Another trick my father taught me, I was Bengay Incorporated, whose desk happened to be in MACY'S. I was running my own business wherever I was, and I've maintained that through thick and thin, through good and bad. I'm a self-contained unit. I don't depend on anybody else to hand me a paycheck. So that's from, I just did the math because you surprised me by remembering age 14 when I started. I'm 78 now. At 64 years of nonstop, everyday commission selling.
That's absolutely amazing. You know, your culture, bring your family, being in business, challenge you to get out there and do that. And gave you some insight that
Yep.
you picked up on, and I think a lot of people don't understand it, is you understood right from the beginning after it was explained to you from your father the leverage of other people and the multiple streams of income that gives you. I think that was sort of a good analogy there to propel you moving forward. Work smarter, not harder, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Mark was just on. Hey, thanks, Mark, for jumping on. And he says, "Hey, Ben." So he shared us out, and you were on his program, so I just want to acknowledge Mark there. So,
Hi, Mark. And he mentioned East Lake. He's a big fan of East Lake and Bobby Jones and so on.
yeah, that was an incredible story. I mean, you have so many stories. We could probably have you on here for days, but I'm a golfer myself, and hearing that story the other day. But the last time I heard you, so you've been selling since 14. You are 78 right now, right?
Correct.
I started selling when I was 32, and I'm 70, going on 71. But I tell you what, I love it. I like being in control. It does come with different challenges.
Sure.
One of the things, because I'm going to bring this up here, is the influence of this book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. There you go. And I know yours is signed, so that, you've got that. But, my early, and the reason I want to bring this up, Ben, is because lots of times people are out there in sales and in business, they're grinding it out. There's these reference books, or these books written by people that have left seeds of success. Most people don't pick them up and read them. Or if they do, they just read the words. They don't really incorporate it at a deep emotional level, and it's just good information. So my little story with this is, and I'll let you expound on that, is when I first got in sales, my national director of sales and financial services, his name was Richard Thawley, and he was a big proponent of this book. And in our management meetings, it was every day we would write our goals out, going through the principles in this book and getting very clear of what we expected in our lives, our personal and business lives. And every meeting, every Thursday was the management meeting. And we'd go through this thing with the yellow notepad, and he's wanting us to read what we did. And we're all egotistic, right?
They're always within arm's reach of me. Yellow pads. Thanks,
Yep.
Mr. Hill.
And we were all, come on, Rich. We've done this before. We don't need to do it again. To make a long story short, the company transitioned, and Rich went off and started another company, a major company today called World Financial. But when I was doing this, I was the number one district in the entire company. And I thought it was all me, my ego. And then when this discipline, this focus on what was in this book went away, so did my productivity. And I was always a persistent, hardworking guy, but I dropped from number one down to, a little above average and ordinary. Okay. So I just want to let people know, and you can make reference to that, how powerful these people that you've been influenced with can change your life, change your business. So with that, it changed mine, but it took me another 25 years, almost 30 years, to figure it out through other coaching, and now starting to apply those things. And I go, now I get it. So, I still got a lot left in me, but it's never too late. So Napoleon Hill, share, you've got a whole lineage of people that you've worked in and around, coached and mentored. Share a little bit about, start with Napoleon Hill. How powerful he was in your life and other people's lives.
I was 25. He was 84. And I was sitting in my office working. I was president of Holiday Magic Cosmetics by that time, the largest direct sales MLM in the world at the time. And my door opened, office door, and there stood William Penpatrick, the owner and one of my mentors, and this little old man. And So I, being a gentleman, stood up, walked around, and I said, "Hi, my name's Ben Gay." I assumed Bill had brought this gentleman to meet me. And Bill said, like I was from Mars, "Ben, this is Dr. Napoleon Hill." Well, I had never seen a picture of Dr. Hill near the age he really was. I had that one, the stiff collar, that young
Mm-hmm.
Hill that looks like he just escaped a lynching party. So I just didn't put them together. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Hill." And he said, "Call me Nappy." And that started our first fight that went on till the day he died, about 3 years later. Because I could not, I'm from the South. You don't call a man 60 years your senior and a doctor Nappy. So I wouldn't do it. I would construct whole conversations to get around using any name for him, because if I said Dr. Hill, he'd say Nappy, and I'd say no. And there'd be 10 minutes wasted arguing about his name. So Bill Patrick told me, he said, "Ben, I've hired Dr. Hill to be your," and I don't remember the word he used, maybe mentor. We didn't use coach back then, but I hired him to work with you. He said, "You're young, and I bet you there are times when you don't want to make that long walk." He was at one end of the building, I was at the other, down to my office to tell me you're scared or you don't know what to do or you're in over your head or something. So you take those problems to Dr. Hill and they will never get to me. He was sworn to silence. I didn't believe that. So I tested it almost immediately. I won't bore you with the story, but there was something I told Dr. Hill that was semi-shocking. It was made up, but it played on a fear that Bill Patrick had that I knew about. And so I told him that. And I waited for a week or two before I forgot about it for my office door to fly open again and have Bill Patrick there, red in the face, veins popping at the head. Never happened. And so from that time on, I felt free to share with Dr. Hill anything that crossed my mind that was worthy. And sometimes we would sit in silence. I had a big conference table as my desk, sat about 10 people. He always sat to my left at the end of the table when he was in town. And he would work. He always had his yellow pad. He would be writing something, probably wrote a book while I was, diddling around. And if I asked him something, he answered. He was free to be in any meeting, anywhere, anytime in the building. And he was, but he wouldn't speak up unless asked a direct question. He never tried to insert himself. So you got all of Dr. Hill you could take, but never too much, which I thought was really wonderful. A couple of Dr. Hill things show you what a small circle we all operate in. Dr. Hill published Think and Grow Rich in 37 or 9 or whatever it was, and it had a little run, but it ran its course. Even back then, 25, 30,000 books were published every year to be, to come out, be a big hit and stay there. You had to be Gone with the Wind or something. So he had his little run and was gone. And personally, professionally, and publishing wise. And then a guy I bought a company from, this was years before I met him and years before I bought his company. His name was Morris Pickus. Morris Pickus was a business consultant. And when I bought a company from him, because he wanted to retire, he said, "You have some attachment to Dr. Hill." And I said, "Yeah, he was my mentor from 67 to 70 when he died." And he said, "Well, you know why he was your mentor?" And I said, "No." He said, "Because W. Clement Stone, Clem, made Think and Grow Rich the best-selling book of its kind of all time. Do you know why he did that?" And I said, "He liked the book." He said he never heard of the book until I called on him to sell him some business consulting of some sort. And back then, we always used to bring a gift to the person we called on, like a hostess gift. I brought him a copy of Think and Grow Rich and gave it to him. Didn't think any more of it. I knew it was a good book. I didn't even know if he'd read it. And he read it, loved it, tracked down Dr. Hill, became his partner, his manager, made everybody at Combined Insurance buy it and read it. And if you bumped into Clem Stone, you better know about Think and Grow Rich, because he would ask you things you would only know if you'd read the book. And so Clem Stone turned Dr. Hill into the person we're talking about today. The material was there, but it wasn't being handled properly. So I start with Dr. Hill before I heard of him or knew of him, through a business partner who gave Clem Stone the book, who made Napoleon Hill somebody that Bill Patrick would want to hire to work for me.
Wow.
And then one day when we were first getting, whenever he was out in California, he'd stay at our house. The first visit, I believe, I'm walking through the living room to show him the view of San Francisco Bay and so on. And I look down the coffee table, and there sits a copy of Think and Grow Rich, about the vintage you just waved around. And I was sort of embarrassed, because I knew my wife had done it deliberately. We didn't always have a copy of Think and Grow Rich sitting on the coffee table. And I said, "Oh, look, Dr. Hill, Think and Grow Rich." And he smiled knowingly. He knew it was a setup. And I said, "How does it feel to have the best, one of the best selling," they used to say it was second only to the Bible, one of the best selling books in the world ever. He said, best selling, least read. Which brings us to this book that I showed you. You see how it's red on the front?
Yeah.
Red on the back? Look at the spine. This book was bought by a lady named Grace Dixon. I don't know her. The book was given to me 2 or 3 years ago by a dear friend of mine who knew of my relationship to Dr. Hill. She found it at a garage sale for 50 cents. And when she handed it to me, I said, "Wow." And I went to open it like you do, and I felt the tension. This book had never been opened, ever, except the day Dr. Hill flipped back the cover to sign it to her. So,
wow, what a treasure.
Yeah. So here, 75 years old. Here's what happened. I know the story. I've been in the business a long time. She went to a meeting or a seminar or a speech or something of Dr. Hill. She was impressed. She had good feelings. She got in line, bought a book, got in another line to have Dr. Hill sign her book. Then she took it home, stuck it in her bookcase, never opened it, and let the sun work its magic on the spine. Never opened. That's as far as it's ever been open, right there, if you can see that.
Yeah.
And I'm reluctant to even do that, because it makes a great story in the condition it's in.
Wow. That you the length of time you're around, being with the some of these people on your list that you've worked around, mentored, and coached you. William Penn Patrick, that was who you worked for?
Yeah, that was the company I joined in 1965 in Atlanta. I answered a lad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And within 2 years, because I won a contest and I was pretty good at speaking. I had a couple of experiences that opened up my eyes to, delivering the benediction at our high school graduation. And when I did like this, 3,000 people stood up, and I went, "Whoa, I like this." So I had a few little encounters that made me like public speaking. Well, in MLM back in those days, everything was done in live meetings.
Sure.
So if you could speak effectively, you started moving up. If you couldn't, recruit heavily, because the money was made being famous within the company and drawing other people. So he owned the company. And 2 years after I joined it, Wednesday, September 15th, 1965 at noon, with another little guy just starting out, although he was 18 years older. His name was Zig Ziglar. Zig came to the same meeting on the same day, having answered the same one ad. 2 years later, I won a year-long contest, and the first prize was a mystery prize. Turned out the mystery prize was presidency of the company. And I said to Bill Patrick, when I'd met him before and had done a couple of seminar tours with him, but I said, "Why was it a mystery prize?" And I said, "I would have worked hard for that. I sort of won it by accident. I continued doing what I was doing, and that was good enough." He said, "Well, I couldn't say what it was, because if the winner was somebody I didn't like, I would have changed the prize. So
Oh, gosh.
the mystery prize was presidency, and he liked me. So, and Zig and my sponsor got the Rolls Royce and the Lincoln Continental and so on. And there are many days, Tom, when I was running the company, and there are good times and bad times when you're running a rapidly growing international company, where I felt like calling Zig or Bill Dempsey, who had those nice cars and were living back home. I'm living out in a strange territory, getting my head beat in every day. I wanted to call them and say, all right, here's the deal. You bring me the car and the car keys, and I will give you the keys to the building. And Zig and Bill Dempsey and another person who was in the running said, oh, no, you won fair and square. So I was like the Chihuahua that caught the bus.
I just sit there and I just visualize, in the moment, you didn't realize how this would all play out, right? I mean, and now looking back, how incredible, powerful those stories are, and having relationships with people and learning from people, I think, is the key. What was your relationship with Earl Nightingale? I really love Earl. The Strangest Secret and those type of things. Did you work for him, or what was your relationship with Earl Nightingale?
Well, he was a supplier of ours because
Okay.
we bought hundreds of thousands of copies, if not millions, of The Strangest Secret. It was part of our training program, and Lead the Field. We had Lead the Field with Holiday Magic, Lead the Field with Stay Power, Motor Oil Additives, Lead the Field with. We private labeled it for every one of our 5 major companies. And in that process, I fell in love with his voice and the things he taught me. The Strangest Secret, the 26-minute recording, and I have one of the original pressings from 1956, about 10 feet behind me in a bookcase. The Strangest Secret did as much for me as Think and Grow Rich. Because one, it was more absorbable. 26 minutes every day for years. I would listen to it first on a record, then on a cassette, and then on CDs and so on. It just became part of my life. I'll be talking to somebody today, and I will hear myself quoting verbatim out of The Strangest Secret. It's part of me. And so anyway, we got in tight with them and the sales managers of the company. And finally, I said, what would it take to get Earl to come to work for us? I'd like him to be the voice of all of our companies. They said, make him an offer. So I did, and he came to work for us. Now, that doesn't mean he gave up Nightingale Conant in his office in Chicago.
Sure.
But our relationship was like mine with Dr. Hill. He worked for me. And I don't say that braggadociously. I say it because it still amazes me. I'm 25 years old. I graduated from high school by the skin of my teeth. I lasted in college 3 weeks. And in high school, by the way, I got thrown out of public school. My father had money, so he sent me to a private school, and I got thrown out of there. And the public school system in Atlanta had to take me back because you have to be in school somewhere till you graduate or you turn 17 or something. So I was not qualified for the job I had. I was at 25, 26, because it took a little while to put my imprint on it and get it going. I was running a company that was operating in 20 countries, 5 brands within each thing, the motor oil additive, the cosmetics, or the vitamins, Bob Cummings vitamins, or whatever. So I was running directly and indirectly 125 companies that in today's money back then was doing $3.5 billion with a B dollars when people didn't talk in billions. And I'm sitting there 25, can barely read a profit and loss, can't read a balance sheet. I still don't understand. If you have $1 million in the bank, don't owe anybody, how does it balance at the bottom? It would seem to be $1 million to zero, but whatever. I learned to take the P&L at any board meeting, up to 125 board meetings a year, flip to the back page, lower right-hand corner. If that number was not in brackets, which meant loss, then we were good. And that was the extent of my financial knowledge. My skill was motivating people, getting people to work themselves to death for me, go to the front of the room and speak. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Dr. Hill had taught me how to build mastermind groups. So I took about 10 warring factions. Accounting hated finance hated, the legal people hated the sales force, and so on. And I was whining about it to Dr. Hill one day, and he said, "Why don't you get them all together in a mastermind?" Have you ever heard that term? I said, "Yeah, it's in the book." He said, "Yeah, get them together as a mastermind, turn them into friends, a team that works together instead of warring factions." He said, "I've been here several times." He said, "I've never seen all these people together. I see one person come in and complain to you and somebody else come in and complain. I've never seen them together." So I turned them into a mastermind group thanks to Dr. Hill, and the business exploded.
Great principle. People, you have to study what a real mastermind is, right?
Mhm.
It's not a group to get together and piss and moan, in my language, but it's coming together with how can we come with a common interest to solve a problem. So masterminds. I've got something here. Maxwell Maltz. He's one of my favorites. I believe through my study of myself and other things that one can't outperform a belief, whatever it is. You can't outperform it, and you can't outperform your self-image. In his book, I've got it here, and I use it in my coaching so much. What was your relationship with Maxwell Maltz?
He spoke at seminars for us, visited
Okay.
the home office numerous times, but mainly he was somebody we put on stage because he had a lot to say, and would help draw a crowd. People wanted to come see him, get their book signed.
Yeah.
And so we paid him fees for that and the right to sell his book. And I've seen him sign 1,000 copies after a talk. I know it was 1,000 because he brought 1,000.
Yeah, he went home with empty boxes, right?
Yeah. He sold them all and signed them all. Great guy. And I asked him one time, how does somebody who started out working on the outer body wind up working on the inner body? He said, "I found out you can't change one without the other. You can turn somebody into a more attractive negative loser, but you still got a loser on your hands." Yeah. So it was a mutually beneficial relationship. We brought him a lot of business. He drew crowds for us. And then I got a little consulting on the side just because my father taught me at East Lake. He was a golfer. At East Lake, I could go over with him. They wouldn't let you caddy because they had caddies, but I could walk around, walk the course, and then go into the men's grill as long as I was quiet. And this was from before 14, thereabouts, but before 14. As long as I sat there quietly and didn't say anything unless asked directly a question by one of the people around the table. And then I was instructed to answer it with yes or no, as close as I could get to that. Dad said, "This isn't the time for speeches." Well, I wound up, therefore, sitting at the table with the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola, whoever it was at the time, changed a few times over the years, the founders of Home Depot. It's all of the Fortune 500 companies had at least a regional office in Atlanta, and whoever was head of that was a member of East Lake. There were corporate memberships. If you were the chairman of the board of Coke, East Lake was automatic. So I got to sit there and listen, and I developed a love for interesting people, characters sometimes, Charlie Manson.
I was going to ask about Charlie here in a moment. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. But Charlie's an example of someone that I could have said no, thank you, but they said Charlie can't come to your meetings. Would you mind going up to his cell? And I went, yeah. I mean, I was headed towards the cell block. Well, they said, not now. We got to get it cleared. but it was just automatic. If you were interesting, if you're a character, if you're successful, I would seek you out. And that's how I met Earl Nightingale. Dr. Hill was a gift, but all the others came because I sought them out.
That's Charles Manson, and that's that brings me back to that. I've been in San Quentin.
All right.
When I was in college, I was my first major was police science and criminologies, and we went and did a tour over at San Quentin. And I tell you what, that was quite an experience. But so what, you've worked in and around prisons, done coaching, or share a little, because I believe, in this world we look at those that have, and then we look at those that don't have. How did you feel that was a place to serve and help people in that created that environment for themselves? How did you help? What was your mission there?
When Bill Patrick and I parted ways, I had a lot of money, a big home in Marin looking over San Francisco Bay, and nothing to do. And my mother was one of those people from the Depression era: waste not, want not, cleanliness is next to God, and idle time is the devil's workshop, or something like that. So when she called and talked to me for the third or fourth time after I had left Holiday Magic, and I still didn't have anything to answer, when she said, "What are you doing now?" She said, "You must find something. This is not good." And Freud said that back then, he might have altered it, but Freud said the three worst things that happened to a man was turning 30, being fired, and his father died. And I had all three happen in 6 months.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was sort of wandering mentally. So we had that conversation. I'm looking out over San Francisco Bay, San Rafael, Richmond Bridge was almost in my front yard. And there's a hill, and sticking up from behind the hill was a smokestack. And I knew, you couldn't see the prison from there, but I knew that smokestack was attached to San Quentin. You drove right past it when you came in to the East Gate and drove in. And so I thought, San Quentin, that'd be interesting. I know how to speak and so on. I've been teaching seminars and helping people better themselves. So I set up, I connived my way through another guy I knew into introducing me to Warden Red Nelson, and got a meeting with him and went over to make a presentation. And I forget what it was, but $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. I'd come in once a week and do 12 hours, sort of an encounter type seminar. And I went over, made the presentation, and he thought it was wonderful. And he said, I think I can ram this through. I said, fantastic. And so he buzzed his secretary and he said, bring me the papers. She knew why I was there. She came in with a stack of papers about this high. I'm a salesperson. We don't do detail work well.
No.
I said, what's that? So I just need you to fill this out, and then I'm going to ram it through. And he agreed to the price. That wasn't a problem. And double back in time, for very, very part-time work in today's money, it was $70,000 or $80,000 for an evening a week, and according to my proposal. And he said, I'm going to push it through. And I said, how long is it going to take, roughly? I didn't know if I should go home and start writing notes. And he said, oh, I'm serious about this. I get it through through the bureaucracy in a couple of years. I said, what? A couple of years? And he said, yeah. I said, what if I did it for free? He said, we could start this afternoon. I said, all right, you got me. By then I was hooked. So, because I'd had the little tour where you went in through the gates, through the double doors.
No, exactly.
That grassy area. Well, to your left, I don't know what time you were there, but to your left, that 2 or 3 story building was the adjustment center, and Charlie Manson was in the top tier, far into the building. If he was there when you were there, he could see you when you came in.
No, that was prior to him being resident there. So that was in the early 70s, 69, 70. And yeah, it was quite an experience being inside. I remember signing the waiver.
I had a friend of mine who actually, people just sign things because it's boilerplate. He actually read it, put the pen down, said, "I'm sorry, I'm not coming in." He was an executive with a top company. I won't say which one because then we could all track down who he was. He got down to the part that we don't negotiate for hostages. If you're taken hostage, we will, if necessary, shoot through you. And that's where Ted, I'll give you his first name, that's where Ted said, "See you."
Yeah, I remember reading that, why am I doing this? But anyway, that it's great sharing those little stories. But hey, Mark has come on here a couple times. Hey, Robert, thanks for jumping on. He's part of our Grow Live Academy, of course. James R. Rucker, tell us about him. Who's he? I'm curious now.
James H. Rucker.
H. Rucker.
Yeah, we'll put you into reading school later and work on the alphabet with you. But it's James Herman Rucker Jr. He goes by Jimmy or Rucker. He joined Holiday Magic with me. He drove the car to the meeting after I answered the ad and called from the telephone booth. He drove us to the meeting. He was my partner. Jimmy's claim to fame is, he has many, but that involve me, is he is the greatest salesperson I ever personally worked with. He never became famous, other than me talking about him all the time, because Jimmy was an unconscious competent. He did not know what he did. When you ask him, to teach these people what you do, and he said his training would be, well, just do what I do. Well, no, they need something to write down. He said, hell, I don't know. I just smile at people and share the same opportunity. He had a unique persona, and the girls loved him. He had dimples and curly hair and so on. You remember, you old enough to remember the cereal commercial with the sugar bear in it? Can't get enough of that sugar crisp.
Oh yeah, sure.
And picture the bear walking along. He sort of sauntered in the commercials and so on. That's how Rucker walked. He just was the most non-threatening human you ever met. And if he told you something, you knew you could take it to the bank. Zig Ziglar and I were heads up in that contest we were talking about with Holiday Magic. Well, what Zig, now that he's dead, I can say it, what people didn't know about Zig was he was a front of the room showman. He wasn't a sit down, close you, hammer you into the ground person. That was his business partner, Mel Lanius. Mel was the closer in that group. In our team, I held my own, but Rucker was the best salesman. If you couldn't close somebody, one of the things was you raise your hand, and people would do that and hope I would come over, or a more seasoned person would come over. I frequently raised my hand to get Rucker to come over because I could. Quick Rucker story you might enjoy. We're sitting at the tables, the meeting has ended, turn to the person who brought you here and ask how you can get started. And then they get out their legal pads and start drawing circles, Amway, think Amway, whatever. Mm-hmm. We have 4 positions. This is the first one. Blah, blah. So I closed everybody I brought except this one guy. He was a little hard, and I raised my hand. Rucker happened to see me, and he came over. He says, "Hey, how you doing? What can I do to help you guys?" And the guy says, "Well, I'm in, sort of. But he said, I have a few more questions." Rucker said, "You will leave here with all of your questions answered." He said, "And I forgot my checkbook." And this is before everybody operated off credit cards. And when everybody was wearing at least a sport coat like you have on now. And in your inner pocket was always what, back in those days? Your checkbook.
Yep.
You didn't go anywhere without it, So he said, I forgot to bring my checkbook. To me, that would have been, okay, end of story. Rucker says, "Oh, that's not true." Stands up, leans over the table, reaches into the guy's suit coat pocket, pulls out his checkbook and says, "Here it is," and put it down on the table in front of him. And I thought, the guy's going to punch him in the face.
Oh my gosh.
It was Jimmy Rucker. Nobody punched Jimmy Rucker in the face. He said, just make it out to Holiday Magic Incorporated, $5,000. And the guy wrote the check out. That was
unbelievable.
Yeah.
My first thought is that, tables are going to turn, right?
Yeah. flip it up like a old Western card table or something. But that's typical of Rucker. He was just so unassuming and honest, and everybody loved him. The best salesman I ever personally worked with.
Yeah, and that's amazing. The unconscious competence. You've been in sales a long time, and it really starts with a mindset and the belief system and all that. But Mark wanted to make sure I asked you this question. What do you believe in sales scripts? In sales?
Yes. I joined Holiday Magic. I was given some scripts. They weren't great, but I wasn't in a position to know that. I changed them all later. I was given some scripts to learn. I was given that copy of Think and Grow Rich. I was my old beat up copy, not this one. I was given a recording, The Strangest Secret, the original 33 1/3 RPM from 1956, and told to go learn the scripts and so on. Well, I said thank you and went home, probably put everything on a counter somewhere. I started listening to the record pretty quick. One day, somewhere near the end of 6 months in the business, I hadn't made any money, hadn't made any sales, nothing had happened. And I come in the meeting at the Georgian Terrace Hotel in Atlanta, still there, by the way, and I walk in, and Bill Dempsey, my sponsor, stopped me at the door, and he says, "Ben, I need to talk to you." I said, "Yeah, what?" He said, "I don't want you coming to the meetings anymore." I said, "What?" Rucker and I had $5,000 sunk in this business. In today's money, it's about $50,000. We're each making $100 a week working for my father. We couldn't afford not to come to the meetings. That was our only chance. I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, you never bring anybody because you haven't learned the recruiting script. I can't let you go to the front of the room and give the opportunity meeting because you've never bothered to learn the opportunity meeting script. And after the meeting is over, you don't close anybody because you didn't bring anybody. But on top of that, you don't know the closing scripts. There were 6 stages to it. If you heard the first one and joined, fine. If it took all 6, fine. But they were word for word scripts." And he said, "So that wouldn't be so bad if it was just your people, but because you're here every night," I think we were there 5 nights a week or something. He said, "People think you're doing well. People think you're doing well in spite of that cheap suit you have on." So it was a little bit more insulting than just, "Hi, I don't want you to come to the meetings." And he said, "So they think you're doing well, so they raise their hands." What I was just telling you earlier, when they need help. And you come over, and because you don't know any of the scripts, not only didn't you bring anybody, you blow off all their prospects. So frankly, you're getting a little depressing. And I said, "Me? I'd never heard depressing and Ben Gay in the same sentence ever. I was voted wittiest in high school." So depressing and Ben Gay, I didn't believe. I said, "Well, what can I do?" Because not coming and not making money is not one of my options in life. He said, "You can go home and learn the scripts. And then when you come stand in front of my desk and give me the recruiting script, the opportunity meeting script, the closing script, word for word, not thought for thought, word for word, I will let you come back to the meetings." So a week or 10 days later, I was standing in front of Dempsey's desk. I performed, and he said, "Good. Now keep that recruiting script in your mind and go out and start talking to people." And our qualifications, I mean, I got in, so there obviously weren't any real qualifications. Our qualifications were, we used to all laughingly carry little pocket mirrors in the side coat of our suits. I put the mirror under your nose. If I got vapor, you were qualified. So he said,
3-foot rule, vapor.
yeah, everybody who was willing to learn a script and so on could do well. So I learned the scripts, went out with my pocket mirror and started talking to people, waitresses in coffee shops, people that worked in the grocery stores I was calling on, etc. I started bringing people to the meetings. And in the next first 6 months, nothing. Second 6 months, I made I think it was $110,000 part-time, still working for my father, adjusted for inflation, part-time. In today's money, I made $1 million. Rucker and I made $1 million. Difference between the first 6 months, second 6 months, scripting. When I started the 800 call center industry, and people came in, and back then we didn't have computers. We had a catalog-like thing that sat on your desk, like a Sears catalog. So if somebody called in, asked for operator 122, they all dialed the same number. But if they asked for operator 122, or department 122 in the ad, you flipped to page 122 and you did the script. Before long, after we got started, we were taking in 50 to 60,000 calls a day. And we built the world's largest answering order taking communication center in the world. And we did it by scripting, from thank you for calling, how may I help you, every call, to the proper script based on the operator they asked for, 50 to 60,000 calls a day for Xerox, Sharper Image, IBM, fill in the blank.
Yeah. You know, the reason I brought that up and made sure Mark got that, because I'm in sales. I've been in sales since 1983. And I was always one of those, I'll go back to the Rucker thing. I'm dyslexic. So I have a learning disability, reading stuff. So I have a real tough time to read and memorize scripting. I mean, it took me years. You know what? I have to hear it, then I can articulate it. But I tell you what, scripting, and the reason I want to bring that up is we've got a lot of people out here that are going to see this, or salespeople. They said, let me do it my way. But
their way, Tom, is a script. If you've been in selling more than 30 days, you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. So those people aren't against scripting. They're against learning an effective, tested script, because that takes effort. Or they have dyslexia. I have mild dyslexia. First, if you come to work in our accounting department, you were taught immediately that a K is a 5. So 2 plus K is 7. And they say, why is K a 5? Because Mr. Gay thinks it is.
Yeah, you and I could probably have a real good conversation about that thing called dyslexia. But
I'm mild, but I have it. I know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
So I would tell somebody like you, then good, here's the script, read it into a microphone. Now, as you're driving along, play that all day, every day, play that. If you learn by listening, you'll learn even better by listening to your own voice. And there's your script. But everybody uses scripts. Yeah. It's the quality of the script that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. Mark wanted to make sure I address. I got to see his little questions here. So, but something is really intriguing. You going to the prison and working with those people that are there. Did you see anybody make a radical change and improve their lives and left and never came back? I mean, because of the influence you brought to that environment?
Yeah, I don't want to take credit for it, but I'll put ego out of the way for a minute. Yes. When I got to San Quentin, the recidivism rate was 67%. 100, you let 100 people out the door, 67 of them would be back in custody within 2 years. Our program there that I created for them was called People Builders. And the graduates of People Builders, our recidivism rate was 5%. And many got out, started businesses, and did very well. Some, I remember getting a letter one time from a guy I really liked, but he wrote, and I noticed it was from one of the prisons. They all have, as you know, you weren't at San Quentin, you were at, I forget the name of it now. The post office there has a little Reseda or something. You were at Reseda, California. So when you write to your mother, she doesn't necessarily know you're at San Quentin. But the recidivism rate was 67%. We drove it down to 5%. Some of the people went on, became extremely successful. I get a letter from a guy, and in the letter, I could tell by the postmark it was one of those phony towns covering up for the fact he was probably at Folsom or somewhere. And I remember opening, he said, I've taken your principles, I've used them as best I can, I'm going to make it, and so on. So anyway, you can imagine my surprise when the people I was with came running out of the bank, guns drawn, bags full of whatever, and jumped in my car. he was the getaway driver at a bank robbery. You can imagine my surprise. He knew who he was with. He knew what they were doing. He knew why he was sitting outside the bank with the engine running, the doors open, and so on. So there's an example of a failure. We had lots of those.
Sure.
And I hope on to do things later, but everybody pretty much got better. I used the secret of public speaking, by the way, to build confidence. It was cleverly disguised. It was an encounter class, sort of scared straight in reverse. Young white millionaire comes in with his friends once a week and yells at you where you're used to yelling at other people, and tells you the way life really works. Let me tell you quickly of something you really hammers home on your question. This gentleman, who Gigi and I have adopted, he was grown when we adopted him, so it made we didn't have to, Gigi said, at least I didn't have to change his diapers. Don't let your past hold you back. The Redemption of a Gangsta by Lamont Bowens. When Lamont first came to a public speaking class I was doing in a prison, he was a 19-year-old drug dealer without a high school education. And he came up, I heard he was trying to get up his nerve to come to this public speaking class, ask if he could come to the public speaking class. But 3 weeks went by and nothing. Then one day he comes up to me outside the class. He says, is it possible that I can come to the class? And I said, sure. He said, just promise me that I don't have to get up and speak, at least in the beginning. I said, you got it. So we went in the side door into the cafeteria where the classes were held, not the indoor. The side door opened up and you were standing in front of the class. And so we walk in, he looked up, and I think he realized he might have been trapped right then. But I said, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of staff members in the room that were ladies, I said, ladies and gentlemen, we have a surprise guest speaker tonight. First time appearance. Welcome, Mr. Lamont Bowens. Lamont, say something to him. And he looked at me. I thought, oh, that's what you look like what somebody looks like right before they kill you. He was not a happy camper, but he spoke for about 4 or 5 minutes. His problem was he didn't have any inventory to talk about, and he was caught unawares. But I was watching him. I thought, my God, this is like back in Atlanta at Ebenezer Baptist Church, watching Martin Luther King Jr. as he was getting his footing. Voice was right, appearance was right. He's a handsome kid, built sort of like a fire hydrant. See that?
Yeah.
And he did very well, and he got an instant, spontaneous standing ovation. And I thought, he's hooked. He is hooked. I got him now. So we helped him get his GED. Then when he got out, he contacted me and asked if I could write a letter of recommendation to get him into college. I said, yeah, what are you going to use for money? He said, that was the second thing I was going to mention. I'm not asking you for any money. You'll never have to pay any money, but would you guarantee my student loan? And I said, yeah, I'll do that for you. So Gigi and I guaranteed his student loan, 4-year degree. It took him 5 or 6 years to get it because he had other issues to work with. Then when he graduates, he calls me and he says, thank you, blah, blah, blah. I graduated whatever in my class, well up the chain. And he said, now I think I want to go to law school. And I said, whoa, can you do that as a convicted felon? He said, you can if a judge signs off on you and so on. And he said, I've got one who's agreed to do it, but I got that money issue again. I said, we'll guarantee your loans. So we did. Lamont now is an attorney, offices on the East and West Coast, very successful attorney. Does extremely well. And he called me the other day and he says, I need another one of those letters. I said, how much is this one going to cost me? Keep in mind, I've never paid a penny. We guaranteed it, but he's been good to his word. Not a penny has ever come out of our pockets. Gigi didn't sleep well the first few nights after we signed the first set. He said, no, this is a letter of recommendation. I'm up for a federal judgeship in juvenile court. I don't think it's like a judge, but he's up for a federal judgeship. This kid who was 19 years old, not a high school graduate, and was a drug dealer, he got in a gun battle with his stepfather. To sort of show. One of the things, Tom, I try and drive home when I tell that story is the differences of zip codes. I was raised 2 blocks out the front gate of East Lake Country Club. I was white, and although I didn't take full advantage of it, I had exposure to an education. I had guaranteed admittance to Dartmouth because my grandfather had left him a lot of money. But my dad and I talked, and we decided that rather than buy a round trip plane ticket to Dartmouth, because I'd need to come back quickly. So it guaranteed I got in. It didn't guarantee I stayed there. We decided to pass on that. If I'd been Lamont and been born in a bad area in Southern California and raised up where my heroes were not the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola, it was a guy in a white mink coat with a Cadillac with a fake Rolls-Royce grill on it. Those were his idols. And he achieved it. He was doing very well in the drug business till he was caught. So a lot of my success is accident of birth. I think it was Malcolm Forbes, one of the Forbes family. They said, how do you become successful? He said, pick your parents carefully. Well, Lamont's were drug people prone to get in gun battles with their own children. And mine was a different element. So there's a huge amount of that. But the real joy of talking about Lamont is if you turn them around and show them what's possible and tell them the truth, not the way you wish it was, the truth, anybody can do just about anything.
Wonderful. I heard that story before, but hearing it again, it just, if we can influence one person in our life and that turn something around, we've served. We have served, because he's going to turn around and he's going to influence somebody. And so that's how we improve the world, by giving through service, leadership, and being honest with them, just right up front, and you gave trust. Probably never had trust in his life, right?
I doubt it. Yeah. I really doubt it.
Dr.
Hill told me to always have, somebody said something to me one day that was a little edgy, since I was the boss and they left. Dr. Hill never talked to me about anything that went on while somebody else was in the room. He'd always wait for the door to shut. And when the door shut, I would wait a beat or two to see if he was going to jump in with something. Well, this person told me the truth about something. Didn't do it eloquently, but he told me the truth, something I needed to hear. And when the door went click, Dr. Hill said, I'll have to clean up what he said, but you'll know the gist of it. He said, always have one person around you who will tell you the absolute blanking truth. And I had read that years ago in a book, Steve Townsend was his last name. He was head of American Motors. He wrote a book called Up the Organization. And in there, he told about having one guy who, no matter what the situation was, when the room cleared, would tell him the truth. A lot of times, real quick, I remember one of the phrases, the guy would sometimes write him a note and it'd start out, before I sally forth on this your latest mission, it once again befalls me to tell you you're full of blank. And he said, I love those memos. I learned so much from them.
And I'm just going to try to make sure I say this in a way, is you mentioned the mastermind and in the collaboration of minds and energy and all that. But going back to that and what you just said is you got to have somebody that's going to put your feet to the fire when you're given the BS, or call you on your stuff, or get you clearer, whatever. And you know what? Most people don't want to hear that.
Yeah. They avoid those people like they're lepers.
But, and the person I have in my life that's that way, and she's my greatest influencer, is my wife.
Yeah. I have one of those too.
Yeah, Gigi. Is it your wife's name, Gigi?
Yeah.
Okay.
First name,
But,
yeah.
you know, we're going to be wrapping up here in the next 10, 15 minutes. So I don't know. We may go the rest of the afternoon. I know you've got a hard stop coming up.
Yep.
The thing that I was really intrigued about is your relationship with the Apollo program, 15, 16, the astronauts. What was your role there? What did you bring to the table for that program? You thinking NASA, you thinking they got everything figured out? They brought you in for a reason. What was that? What was your mission with the Apollo people?
Well, again, it's one of those try and meet interesting people. I had a lady, who worked for us in Holiday Magic. We call them holiday girls. She was a holiday girl, and in casual conversation one day, she mentioned that her husband was the launch test supervisor of the manned space program at NASA. I'm proud I can remember that title. It doesn't fit well on a business card. But I said, what? And she told me, I said, wow, I'd like to meet him. She said, why don't you come down for a launch? So I went down for a launch. It turned out it was at Apollo 14, Apollo 14, Alan Shepard's Apollo flight. He came out of the Mercury program. And I went down to watch that take off. And that night, the crews of the next three launches, Apollo 15, 16, 17, were there. And I was watching the interaction between the astronauts and the few members of the launch and ground crews that were there. There were 3 of them and 9 ground crew. And I was thinking, why isn't everybody you can fit in the house here? These are astronauts and the guys who send them up. You know, if I'm going to be sent up on top of a burning stick, I want the guy who lights it to call me Uncle Ben. I want to be like buddies. So he might say, hey, Ben, don't get on that one. That's not a good rocket. There was nothing. The ground crews, launch crews, etc., looked at the astronauts from afar. You know, they each were given by a Chevrolet dealer while they were active astronauts a Corvette to drive around, and they were red, white, and or blue. And so they were movie stars. You know, the only thing missing was the silk scarf as they flew past you in their Corvette convertibles. And the ground people were treated like grunts. And so somewhere during the evening, I said to the group, you're making a major mistake here and you're putting your lives in danger. No one here has called you Uncle this, or even by your first name primarily. It was Mr. or third-party astronaut and so on. You need to get in with these people. And I said, Jim, and I assigned Jim Harrington. He was the launch test supervisor of the manned space program. I assigned him the program. Have regular gatherings like this until they take off on their own and they're meeting at other people's houses, where you get them together and turn them into a team, not them and us. They love that. And then they were concerned about what do they do. Astronaut is sort of a short-lived live career. You know, you're not one forever if you survive the experience. So, you know, what do we do next? I said, well, you got your military pensions. I said, well, that's lovely, but what do we do? You know, so I told them about getting into selling. Then when I met with the head of NASA at the time, Miles Ross and Dr. Davis, there were 2 of them. They were whining, and I'd say that lovingly, about the lack of funding. NASA has never gotten as much as 2% of the federal budget. It's always hovered at 1% or less sometimes. We got to get more funding. I said, well, here's one of the reasons you're not getting funding. No one knows what you do. We gather around the television and watch the rocket take off. In the early days, it was Vanguard. They'd go up about 20 feet and fall over and explode. And then the Mercury program, which had its problems, and then Gemini and Apollo, and then the space shuttle. I saw the first mock-up of the space shuttle in a secret room in the assembly building next to the VIP launch area, where when Apollo 14 took off, the entire Supreme Court was sitting right behind me in the VIP stands. And a more interesting person, Charlie Smith, who was the oldest living American at the time, had been sold as a slave. When he was 100, they thought, no one knew, but they thought he was 110 based on documents when he was sold. So again, interesting people. So I said to Dr. Davis and Miles Ross, do you have written down anywhere all the things you have achieved that NASA has brought to us? And they said, well, yeah, if you have a heart attack, when you go out to the ambulance and they hook you up and start treating you as the ambulance begins to roll, that's NASA. When you look at your digital watch, that's NASA. When you look at your Teflon fry pan, that's NASA. For various spin-offs of various things that they were doing.
What those programs brought to man,
Yeah. So
our cell phones, right?
they said cell phone miniaturization. Yeah, because the Russians had great big heavy lift rockets. They didn't have to worry about miniaturization. We didn't. You had to really think about something that you put on the rocket that weighed a pound, probably less than that, but a pound was something to consider. So miniaturization. So they sent out for somebody. It reminds me of San Quentin when Red Nelson called for the paperwork, and this lady comes in with a book, those metal things up through the spine where you screw it down. A book of the things that came out of NASA, small print, this thick.
Sure.
And I said, no, nobody knows about that. I'm a reader. I'm your guy. If I don't know, lots of people don't know. So they said, well, how do we spread the word? I said, at the time, I'm quoting from memory, they had 100 astronauts on flight status, and they're sending up 3 at a time. I said, you've got 100 guys running around here. They were all men then. You have 100 guys running around here who were smart, articulate, intelligent, and with a little study, they too will know what you've done. Send them out to talk to service clubs, schools, etc., and let's start telling the people, give NASA more money. Look at all the benefits we're getting.
Wow.
So we'll put them on the road. So anyway, somewhere in that first meeting, Jim Irwin, one of the finest men I've ever met, the commander of Apollo 15, stood up, pointed at me, and he said, you are our attitude coach. And like San Quentin, it was a great honor, but I didn't get paid for it.
Yeah, I know we're probably running to your hard stop coming up here. So
I've got a few more minutes. That's my warning that the hard stop's coming up.
I just got 2 short questions. Hopefully, I get 2 short answers. Okay.
Lots of luck. Did I mention I'm a Southerner?
Because we have a lot of people in business, and I just want to influence people. The greatest strength is you could have one greatest strength in business. What would that be?
Integrity.
Great. What is a weakness that will cause you to go under?
Lack of discipline, but slothfulness, lack of discipline.
Okay.
I started to mention that when we were talking about scripting. The reason most people don't operate off an effective script is they are lazy and slothful. They're not willing to do it, as was I. I repeat, September 15th, Bill Dempsey gave me the scripts. I don't think I looked at them till he threw me out of the company.
Yeah.
Why? Laziness, slothfulness.
All those things. And I'm relating with a lot of what you're saying, and I think our audience as well. I appreciate what you sent me. I got your books. What I appreciate the most, besides the content, I'm still just diving into these with all the other books I've got. Thank you very much. What I want to do is make sure people can recognize. There we go. The Closers 1, Part 1, and the Closers Part 2. And what did I do with the? This is Powerful Stories. I like this little book right here.
That comes free.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. These are the type of things that you get my attention but it's very, very, I'm very grateful with that. So anybody wants to know more about Ben and what he's doing, you can get a hold of him through his website, which is on the ticker below here. I just encourage anybody out there. I'm a big proponent. If success leaves clues, find those who are successful and pick up their crumbs, because That is how you get to the top. And I just want to say something, and you mentioned it, and I just want to, one of the things I think has helped me in my life and my career is reaching out to those people that we see that are doing something bigger, scarier than what we're doing, and reaching out to them. I just encourage anybody is, if you want to grow, seek those out that have been the journey. And I appreciate, Ben, what you've, coming on. We just met here this afternoon. It meant so much to me. And I've done that through my career, and it's helped me grow in ways that I would never have done, getting through the fear of asking for help, asking for guidance, asking. Learn that, and you'll get to the top. So, Ben, in closing, one closing thought.
I was asked at a seminar not too long ago. I remember in Las Vegas. It was one of those questions I hate. Name 3 things you learned from Earl Nightingale, or name, whatever. I learned 100 things from Earl Nightingale, and more than that probably from Dr. Hill, and even more than that from William Penpatrick. And I was blessed to have a father who wasn't a teacher, a conscious teacher, but everything he did was something I see. People say you try not to become your parents. Well, I've spent a lot of years trying to become my parent. And my mother and father were both wonderful, but Dad was the dominant force. So anyway, I'm in Las Vegas, and somebody says, you spent all this time with Dr. Hill. What are the 3 things you learned from him? And I thought to myself, tongue don't fail me now. Because I didn't have, give me all afternoon, I could talk about all sorts of things he taught me. But if you want 3 right now on the spot, and what came out of my mouth was integrity in all things. 2 was focus, because I had a bit of a focus problem, still do from time to time, but I hear Dr. Hill in my ear going, focus, Benjamin, focus, and action. Reading the books, going to the seminars, it all gives you the input, the fuel. But if you don't take action, it means nothing. So integrity in all things, focus on what you're doing at any given moment and in your career, and action. Capital A, capital C, capital TION, exclamation mark. Action is the real secret. Great.
Ben, I appreciate it much. I know you've got a hard stop coming up here. You're welcome to stay in the green room, but if you got to jump off, please do. But I'm going to close out. You have a blessed Christmas holiday coming up, and wish you and Gigi. I know we have another conversation about your wife and how she gets these books out from you.
The website there, don't order at bfg3.com. Order at the one that Tom put up earlier.
There you go.
www.stores, eBay. Write that down if you're going to order, because that's Gigi's book company, where she steals the inventory from me, doesn't have to pay for it, puts it in my shipping channel, so she doesn't pay for shipping. So at her site at eBay, you get special pricing and free shipping. So much as it kills me, I have to live with a woman. Order there.
And she's an enterpriser, that's for sure. Ben, God bless you. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Thanks for sharing your stories. And I'm confident that some of the nuggets you shared will cause people to reflect and think and take action. So I appreciate you much. So God bless you and your family. Merry Christmas to you.
Same to you. And anytime I can be of service, just call me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ben. Bye now.
Bye.
That's Ben Gay. Wow. A legend. As I was closing out today on that, to get where you want to go in life, those 3 principles he shared are very important. That's wisdom. That's 40-some years of experience capsulated in 3 principles. But to really grow, you got to challenge yourself. Reach out to people and don't be afraid to ask for help or guidance or direction or thoughts. Because there's people like Ben Gay that have influenced, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people he's touched. And I just encourage you, you do contact him and get a book, get his books. Because if you're in sales, and I believe everybody's in sales, I say you can take this and apply it in life, these principles. So reach out as a coach, as a mentor. If you're looking to get unstuck, give me a shout. You can text results to 21,000. You can email me. You can get a calendar appointment, and it'd be my honor and pleasure to have a conversation with you. Don't let fear get in the way. If you're stuck, looking to grow, reach out. And I would be glad and to be an honor to support you any way I can with what I have learned from people like Ben. I have learned, I studied some of the things he's done before he came on. I could spend hours with Ben, but reach out. I've reached out my entire career to people that, you know, like I said, success leaves crumbs or clues. Learn to pick them up. Learn to pick them up and then do something. Take action is critical. So G-Force, have a wonderful day. I'll be back on tomorrow on Saturday's Reflections. And again, Monday through Friday. And next week, I got another great guest coming on, and I'll announce that on Monday. It is with gratitude. Take this information and share it out. You never know who you can influence and make a difference in somebody's lives. So with that all said, have a great day. G4.